Hi everyone, welcome today to the today's speaker series. We are Globe. Globe is Global Leaders Outreach for a Better Environment. We are a student organization that tries to um, connect students with businesses and network and understand how sustainability works out there in the world. Today we have Amanda Kardosh, who I will talk about a little more. First, if you guys can you check in for us, please? This leads to Globe's engagement so that we can get more funds and host more activities like this. Right. So this is where you would keep up with PCGS and whatever is happening in here. We have partnered with PCGS to bring this together for you guys. Now, these are the different places where you would be able to keep up with whatever's happening with Globe. It's our Instagram. We post opportunities for volunteering, whatever is happening on campus, on GroupMe and on Bulls Connect. Well,
Hey,
today,
can you share your screen with the online attendees?
give me a second. Share a screen.
Yeah, to share the screen.
Green screen.
See, Catherine. Sorry.
It is a full circle moment for PCGS as we welcome Amanda. She was a student right here, where she sat over here in these classrooms and learned everything that we did. And now she is a professional in the world. She is the sustainability director for Blooming Brands, and she's been working in the field of sustainability, ESG, and corp. That's all I remember.
All together.
For 15 years. She's also represented, negotiated for delegations in the in 9 different United Nations climate conferences. So she's insane. Please talk to her after this. She's gonna talk to us about how brands say a lot of things, but how does that translate to measurable impact? And let's see what she says. This is a check-in again if anyone wants to. Here we go. Thank you, Shuchi. Yeah.
Yeah, hi everyone. I am super excited to be here. I can't believe that it has been 8 years since I graduated here at Patel College. It seems like yesterday. It's like crazy. So I am Amanda Kardosh. I have been working with Blooming Brands for 3 years. I do lead all of the ESG initiatives for the company. It is the first time that Blooming has someone specific to lead like sustainability at the company. So we are, like building the area, making sure that we can think through the initiatives. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about what we're doing, how we measure our impact, and some projects that we have implemented. But first, I just want to share with you a little bit about myself and my career. As you can imagine, my accent is not from Kentucky. I am originally from Brazil, and I started my career back there 15 years ago. I was able to join like different sectors. So I was able to work for biofuels, oil and gas industry, tech companies, and now I'm working for a restaurant company, which I'm going to tell you more about Bloom in a few slides. The other thing that I did throughout my career, and I think was super important, and I will encourage you to try to participate as well, is try to join as many conference and many events that you can, because not only like the knowledge and the content that you can learn, but also like the network. I think the network is the most important part when you go to those conference. And I was lucky enough to participate in some of the UN climate change conference, including the one in Paris. That was like the highlight, because that's when like 196 countries coming together to sign the Paris Agreement. So it was awesome to be part of that, like environment, to learn and to connect with so many people from different countries. So I think that is super important for you guys to try to connect and, like participate in some of those events. The other thing is related to different companies and different areas, right? So I was able to work for small companies, big companies, medium-sized companies, and all of them were super important for me. And at some time, I was working for a small company with like 20 employees, and we got acquired by like a big tech company with like 3,000 employees. So we became like a medium company from like in 2 days. So you never know what's going to happen. Don't like subestimate like small companies or opportunities, because they're super relevant and super important in your career. And then the last thing that I would say is like sustainability. It's such like a new field that in all of those companies, I was able to join like different areas inside the company. So at some point, I was like part of the sales team. In some companies, I was part of HR, marketing. Nowadays, we have a lot of my peers, they are part of the legal team, because we have a lot of like regulation that's coming on. So it's all about like where you see the feed and how you can show the company like the strategy and the importance about sustainability. So I think like, keep that in mind, because that's super important as well. So talk more about Blooming. Blooming is the parent company of 4 different restaurant brands. We have Outback Steakhouse, Carrabba's Italian Grill, Bonefish, and Fleming's. And fun fact, I don't know if you all know this, but Outback was it started here in Tampa in 1988, and the first restaurant is still open. So if you want to visit, it's in South Tampa at Henderson. And nowadays we have around 1,500 restaurants in 12 different countries, but 75% of our footprint is here in the US. In terms of like team members, we have almost like 65,000 employees right now and 4 billion in revenue. And so talking about sustainability for Blooming, right? When we think about ESG and sustainability, you have so many topics. And the first thing that we did starting in 2019 was to think through like, out of all of those topics, what are the ones important for the company? What are the ones that are really important for the business strategy? And then we develop what we call our ESG framework. So it's based on 3 areas: our environment, our ingredients, and our people. And under each of those pillars, we have like 4 different topics. So for example, like animal welfare is super important for like the restaurant industry, but it might not be like an important topic if we're in the oil and gas industry, for example. So we need to find and make sure that we can connect like what are the relevant topics, which we call like the material topics for company and for their business. So it does make sense to, like translate sustainability to the business strategy instead of just being something, like to add as a few projects. So today I'll focus on our climate goal, because we are having like the climate week. Climate teaching week. So I think the goal is to share with you guys, like not only our goal, but what we have been doing so far in terms of like projects, some results, and also like what is the challenge, not only for Blooming, but for a lot of the large companies out there. What is the challenge to measure and to reduce the climate impact? So at Blooming, we do have a climate goal of reduce 46% of our scope 1 and 2 by 2030, and our baseline is 2019. And I will explain a little bit more about scope 1, 2, and 3 in my next slides, but it's pretty much the emissions associated with our direct operation. So, and also we do have a challenge to become net zero by 2050, which is like a huge challenge because then we're including suppliers and all of our other impacts outside the company, not only inside the company. But before I jump into what we're doing and specific about Blooming, I just want to bring like some of the reasons why climate impact does matter to a lot of companies, right? Even for like a restaurant company, how you can connect like why climate is important. So the first thing is like operational cost. Thinking about like the days that are hotter, like our summer is getting warmer and warmer. We can see that year over year when we check, for example, our electricity bills. We need to have AC working much more than we had the year before. The other thing is about like extreme weather events, thinking about like hurricanes in Tampa or like snowstorms. That also could impact like our revenue because no one is going to go to a restaurant if we're having like a hurricane or if we're having like a snowstorm. So traffic is really bad when we have those severe weather events. So that's all related to climate risk for our business. And that's what we try to, like see how we can reduce or even thinking about those risks when we're thinking about like new restaurants or, like the restaurants that we have right now. The other thing is supply chain. Everything that I said, it always happen with our supply chain as well. So thinking about the beef supply chain or any other ingredient that we need in our restaurants, right? Are you familiar with the blooming onion that we have at our back? So that blooming onion, we need the onion to get to a certain size. So we're able to provide to you like what you expect. And if we do not have a lot of rain in Idaho, for example, we get smaller onions. So that could impact our final product as well. So all of that is related to climate impact, but sometimes we just do not connect the dots, right? We're just thinking about like big picture and forget about thinking about like supply chain and how does that has like a direct impact in our costs and our menu, for example. The other thing is investors. So everything that I told you here is not new for them. So they really know that climate is like a high risk for any business and they want to know how we are managing that. So we got a lot of questions from all of our investors. They want to see commitments, they want to see, and they also want to see our progress. They want to see how we're going to meet that 46% that I told you that we promised as a reduction for scope 1 and 2. So that's why every year we develop like a ESG report where we communicated all of our progress towards any of those goals in all of those areas that I showed you. So animal welfare, water, waste, and climate as well. So all of the 12 topics that I mentioned. And the last one, and I think I mentioned that when I said legal, is regulation. So that's like we are now dealing with like a lot of like new regulation. California just launched a new regulation that every company that does business in California, and no matter like, for example, for us, we have a few restaurants in California, but we do need to report all of our emissions for like our total footprint and starting now in August. We have been doing this for the last 3 years, so for us, it's not new. But for a lot of companies out there, they have no idea where to start, how they will measure, and what they can to reduce it. So it is a quite big regulation that's coming, and it's not only for like public companies, it's for every single company that do business in California right now, like private, doesn't matter. So I talked about scope 1, 2, and 3, and I brought this image just to clarify to you what does that mean. So scope 1, as I said, is everything that is direct emitted by the company. So thinking about restaurants is all of the natural gas that we use to cook our food. That's pretty much our scope 1. So if I want to reduce scope 1, I need to think about like better equipment, or like sometimes changing, switching from natural gas to electrical equipment, like things like that. Scope 2 is everything related to electricity. So it's all your energy consumption. So in every single restaurant, I need to, like gather the bill and make sure that we can calculate the emissions associated with how many kilowatt hours we're using for the restaurants. And then comes scope 3. That's everything, like all the upstream and downstream activities that we have in our restaurant. So thinking about like the beef supply chain, since the cow calf, the feed yard, everything that you need for that steak to get to the restaurant, we'll need to calculate the impact associated with that. So pretty much for every pound of beef that we sell, we need to think about like what is the CO2 emissions associated with that. And that's a huge challenge for like all of the companies out there. Imagine for a company like Walmart, or like a big retail, they need to calculate emissions for every single product that they are selling there. So scope 3 is like, it is a big challenge for all of us, but it's also where we can see a lot of opportunities to help our suppliers and to reduce emissions and to really find some real impact to reduce the climate risk. So here are some examples of what we have been doing at Blooming. The first one that I brought here is about our kitchen. So as I mentioned, in some of our restaurants, we're trying to electrify all of the equipment that we have. So at some point, we can have, for example, renewable energy in our restaurants and be able to reduce our scope 1 and 2 to 0. So let's say solar panels, or, like even like renewable energy coming to the grid. But that will be the only way for us to really reduce natural gas emissions or scope 1 and 2. So we're testing now a few different type of equipment that we can, like switch from natural gas to electricity and see how does that work with our menu, the chefs, if they approve it. It is a long process to make sure that everyone is happy, and not only the implementation is easy, but throughout the years, we're not going to spend more in energy, for example, than we used to spend in natural gas in terms of cost as well, because that's the other thing that we need to add to the equation, right? I cannot come up with like a crazy idea. Okay, let's move to electric kitchen. And then down the road, we see that the operation is going to be much more expensive than we used to have when we had like natural gas. So that's one thing that we're testing now in a few restaurants. The other thing is participating in some renewable energy investments. So some states, and we have been signing 2 agreements, one in Illinois and the other one in New York. Some states, they offer what we call the community solar initiatives. Those are projects that are outside of restaurants. They're not happening in our restaurants. They're happening like anywhere in the state. But because we become like a subscriber of the project, they have more leverage to bring to the bank and get the investment that they need. And in order to become a subscribers, we get some bill credits in our utility bills. So it is a win-win. We start investing in renewable energy, the project developer get more credit, and at the end of the day, we also get some bill credit so we can reduce our cost, not only our environmental impact, but our cost as well. Oh, those are two examples. We have been doing like other things, but since 2019, as I mentioned, 2019, it is our baseline. So we have reduced 16%, and that's based on 2024 numbers. We are now finalizing and working on our 2025 report. Usually that takes time because we need to close all the bills and make sure we can, like have the audit team to review the numbers. But I do believe it's going to be a little bit more than 16. So either we're going to keep around 17, 18, but we're going to do like a little bit better in terms of like reduction in 25. And then the last thing is related to scope 3, just to get the topic back. So as I mentioned, I do like that image because that's pretty much what it is for a company, right? Scope 1 and 2 is like going off the iceberg. And then scope 3, it sometimes is like 90% of your emissions. So it's pretty much like where you need to keep an eye on and how you can engage with like other stakeholders and not only inside the company. And I brought like our supply chain, our beef supply chain, so you can have an idea about like all the steps that we need to calculate in order to get to the restaurant and then to find like, for example, the CO2 emissions associated with like every pound of beef that we sell, like every steak that we sell to our clients. One important thing to mention, for example, when we think about like the beef supply chain, the land use change is part of that calculation. So every time that we have an issue, for example, like deforestation, that's part of the equation. So that's why we do have a commitment to keep our supply chain deforestation free. So we have a partnership with all of our beef suppliers to make sure that they have all of the mechanisms in place to guarantee that nothing's happening in areas that they're, like they have like deforestation problems or they had in the past. The other thing is about transportation. So that's a big portion of like in calculation, not only our own transportation, but for all of other companies that we're dealing with. And we try to help them to find like the better roads, how we can reduce the impact, how we can, like do more in with like less trucks. All of that is part of our scope 3 emissions and how we can reduce that. So just to leave you with like 3 takeaways, key takeaways, and I don't think this is only for climate. That's pretty much for everything that we're going to see in the sustainability field. Think about, for example, water or, like any other impact. The first step in my view is like be able to measure it. So that's why the greenhouse gas report, for example, when you think about climate impact, is so important for companies. That's the first step. Like you cannot reduce or you cannot even think about like what are your main areas if you cannot measure it. So I think that's the first step. Be able to have data and trust your data, and with that data, be able to find the real opportunities, right? And not spend your time with like the little things, but really try to focus on the large. In our case, like the biggest levers would be beef in our supply chain, or for the restaurants, energy, like all of those big opportunities. And then the last thing is trying to be like to actually have real projects. I think sustainability sometimes become like an idea, like we talk a lot, is a lot about marketing and reporting, but we do need to connect like the ideas with like real results, like show progress. That's what I mentioned in our reports. That's what investors want to see, what we're doing and how we're going to get to our goal, and how we're going to, like implement those initiatives, how they're doing, and not only reduce environmental impact, but make sure that we also reduce cost, like engage with suppliers, make sure we have the credibility that we need in the market. To answer any questions, please don't be shy. Go ahead.
So we know that today, takeout and delivery orders are becoming more and more popular with platforms like Uber and DoorDash. So I'm wondering if physical locations, physical restaurants start to diminish into the future and the focus becomes on deliveries, how will that impact your sustainability?
I think during COVID, we saw a lot of that. So the restaurants pretty much they closed the door and everything was like takeout. Right now, it's like it is growing, but not as fast as we thought it would be. We try to reduce the impact when we think about like, like packaging, for example. You're now doing like a research to see how we can reduce the impact associated with packaging without losing any quality, because that's what we want. But right now, I still think that like restaurants and, like the physical location still going to be open for like, I don't know, few years, I think.
With the total emissions, would you also include like delivery and like takeout?
We do. So what we do, for example, we have partners like he mentioned, DoorDash, Uber Eats. We request them all of the miles that they work for us, and then we calculate based on those miles. And that's the downstream, right? From our restaurants going to the client, that's part of scope 3 as well. It's outside the organization, but it's still part of scope 3.
So you're actually getting the information directly from the company. It's not like having an estimate of the emissions.
In that case, we do get some like quite good reports from like Uber Eats and DoorDash. Yeah. And for other things, we need to estimate based on like global factors. But in that case, we do have some actual reports. Yeah.
How long is like the timeline and like requesting that kind of information?
For those partners that I mentioned, to be honest, it's not like a long time, like usually like 2 weeks. They're pretty fast to return to us. Other suppliers, then it takes time. Like you need to engage with them, make sure that they can develop their own report, and then you can have access to their data. Sometimes takes like a year and more.
For the regulation that you mentioned in California, it includes scope 3 emissions or just scope 1 and 2?
A very good question. So the first year, no, it's only scope 1 and 2. In 2027, yes, the companies will need to disclose scope 3.
So it will be very hard to monitoring the scope 3 for the company, especially the smaller companies.
Yes, you will. Yeah. We have like a lot of like tools in the market to help you to calculate that, like a lot of softwares, and they're getting better and better. But still, like we're still missing a lot of like information that we need in order to be very confident about like the final numbers.
I want to ask another question. I listened to a podcast about sustainability targets for the corporates and the sustainability managers in the podcast were talking about sustainable targets versus financial targets. And they mentioned about the things that to address sustainability challenges always have to drive business. Otherwise, we cannot implement it. What is your personal view in that?
I think it's correct. Like sometimes you need to find those win-wins. So I can give you an example, like food waste. It's like a huge impact for us, right? But for example, in the US, you have the opportunity if you are donating food and you divert that to go to the landfill, you can get some tax credits. So even though we have like some costs in donating it, for example, I can still offset that when I get the tax credits. Sometimes could be even like a good revenue for the company. So finding those opportunities where you can, like see like environmental impact reduction combined with like either cost savings or like revenue, I think those are the ones that you can easily, implement in the companies. And when you have like the hard ones that like maybe the company is going to spend a little bit more, it's important to show the long term, right?
Yeah, sure.
Sometimes you're thinking about this year, like I mentioned, some climate risks. Sometimes they're just thinking about the revenue for 2026. But if we do not implement some of the initiatives, in 5 years, we're going to have like a much like more expensive, I don't know, for onions, for example. So it's important to keep that in the leadership radar as well, because sometimes they are focused on the short term, and it's important to bring the long term to the conversation as well.
What level would you say that Bloomin' has like communication with its suppliers, like Cisco and US Foods? And then does that kind of communication, does that affect how y'all move forward with sustainability? And is that an area where sustainability efforts go?
Yeah, so we do have, like we communicate with our suppliers. So for example, I can give you an example. Every year we have like a supply chain conference where we bring them all to Tampa and we talk to them. And every year I present to them what is sustainability for us, what we're expecting from them. We also have a platform where we send some surveys to those suppliers and we ask them what they're doing in all of those areas that are important to us. For example, animal welfare, when I'm talking to my beef suppliers. So things like that. So we do have some surveys and scorecards to make sure that they are implementing some initiatives, and we can also track the results that they are getting.
Very top down and innovative. Good to hear.
Go ahead.
How do sorry, clear my throat there for a second. How do companies like interact with like Coase theorem? Coase theorem? Because like for those that don't know, like Coase theorem is like this idea in economics of like when dealing with shadow costs that the offending party, for example, would pay the other party affected to like offset the cost or damages of said shadow cost or pollution or whatever. I was just curious about how do corporations like how do they like interact with that theorem or said idea, especially like when it comes to things like like pollution and how that affects like the world economy or the environment, etc.
So
Externalities.
yeah,
Ronald Coase like with
trying
externalities.
to internalize some of the external impact. That's what we're saying, like trying to bring some almost like fees to pay for those impacts.
Yes.
So I know like a few sectors that we can see that happening right now, and I'll give an example. For example, packaging. And that goes back to the regulation as well. So we do have new regulation in some states where we need to calculate every single pound of plastic that we put in our takeout packaging, and we need to pay a fee for those plastics. And that fee goes to the county or the state to help them to implement a better system to recycle the material. So that's going to be part of my cost. If I want to put more plastic, I will need to pay more fees. So, and that also force companies to think about, okay, how can I reduce my impact? And instead of like using plastic, can I use like a better material like paper or even like a compostable one? So I think that's something that's happening right now, but more on the regulation side than on the buyer marketing side of.
And will there be a way for like the supplier marketer side to be more involved in that whole process in the future?
I think so. Like, for example, if you think about the opportunity now, I'd love to have some suppliers coming to me and show like different materials where I can invest now instead of paying fees for the plastic. I would pay a little bit more to have a better material instead of paying fees and use plastic. So I think coming up with like innovation and, like partnership, I think it would be key, not only now, but for the future as well.
So you were the first person who set up everything in Blooming Brands as in sustainability, right? I would love you were before you there was no department for sustainability, correct?
Yeah.
I would love for you to share your experience in setting this up because a lot of us may or may not join that companies which has sustainability and your experience will be super valuable.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yes, you're right. So I am the first one. They didn't have like a specific role for sustainability before. We had other areas that are working with sustainability, like corporate affairs, legal, but not a specific person. As everything in life, it has like pros and cons, right? I think the pros is definitely something new. So you can create your like with your ideas. So what I did, the first thing that I did was to make sure that I could engage with other areas that I knew was important for the sustainability strategy. For example, accounting team which helps me with the greenhouse gas emissions report a lot. Like they are my best partners like facilities. Facilities is the one leading everything related to energy costs in our restaurants, water, like natural gas. So again, she's my best friend. And also the leadership team. So make sure that you can interact with them and they understand what you're doing. And most important, that what you're doing is not disconnect from the business strategy. I think that's the main point, like you don't want to present yourself as something that is like an extra area or extra cost to the company. You want to show them that you do can bring opportunities to reduce costs, to improve revenue, or even to become more strategic in the future if you have, for example, climate risk or things like that. So I think connecting with other areas, making sure to communicate with their language, like don't try to bring your sustainability words to like accounting. They're not going to understand you, like you need to develop, like you need to communicate with them with their own language instead of trying to bring your own agenda. I think that was important too. But it is a work in progress, I would say. It's always something that we can.
That's something with this question. What was the driving force for your company establishing a sustainability department? It was the regulation, external forces, or the company decided that we need to improve our brand value to public. Which were the driving forces?
I think all of them combined. So I would say brand reputation, investors pressure, stakeholders, clients, customers. We also have some NGOs like nonprofits that they also pressure us in terms of like animal welfare, for example. They want to see our commitment to use only like cage-free eggs, like things like that. So I think a combination of all of those stakeholders is what they need to think about in having our area and make sure we have a process to, like engage other areas, like think about initiatives and have someone to manage those initiatives. I think that was the reason. Just go back to your question because I also remember something important. So because I was the first and the only, and also food sector was new for me. I came from the oil and gas, as I mentioned, so I have never worked in the food industry before. One thing that was important for me, and I do recommend for you guys to keep that in mind, is to connect with your peers. So when I think about other restaurants, they are not my competitors. Sometimes they are like my best partners. We have meetings every 2 weeks where all of the sustainability like professionals from like Darden, Chick-fil-A, McDonald's, we all come together to think about those challenges that they are the same for all of us, right? Packaging is going to affect all of us. California rule is going to affect all of us. So I think thinking about like your peers is also important as well. They can help a lot. Like they can be your best friends as well. Go ahead.
As a former restaurant employee, I'm always interested in the state of work for employees. So I'm wondering what is Bloom and Brands doing to make the life and the work of employees better?
So yeah, I mean, we do a lot of things like D&I, for example. We have like a lot of like we have our groups inside Blooming where they can, like interact and communicate. For the restaurants, one thing that we're doing right now is we are reducing the number of tables, for example, that each of our waiters need to work with. So they need to attend like 6 tables, and now they're going to reduce to 4, so they can have more time and they don't need to rush. And actually, they can have more time to spend with our clients and make sure that they can talk and interact and be more like efficient and not running around the restaurant. So I think that's one thing that came to mind. Benefits, making sure that they can, like have all the support that they need, not only for their manager, but from our HR team as well in our corporate office. I think that's important. Always have like an open channel where they can communicate and they can, like talk to the corporate office as well if something happening in the restaurant or things like that.
Um, so I've got a few different questions, but I think the person in the red touched on it already, like how you kind of vet your partners. So like that their sustainability is within your is in line with your goals. Like for example, a smaller company that is not necessarily going to have an office of sustainability such as yours, how do you ensure that they are not, sweeping things under the rug or like not giving all the information you need, making sure that the person you're like, if you're working with DoorDash, making sure that DoorDash, for example, DoorDash is a pretty big company, but
Yeah.
like, for example, if you're working with DoorDash, how are you making sure that DoorDash's climate compliance is in line with your goals? And then if they're not, if that's not happening, then what do you do? Like, do you just cut ties with them? Because I imagine that really be, you know, bad for revenue, right? So what sort of things do you guys do in that sort of situation?
That's a good question. So one thing that we did, and it was like 3 years ago, we implemented a tool called Covaras. And one of the reasons why we decided to implement that tool is that before that tool, we used to send a questionnaire to a point to ask what they're doing, their KPIs, and they just answer it. No one was reviewing it because, to be honest, like we do not have a huge team that are able to go back and do like a desk review in all of those suppliers. So we decided to implement that tool. So that tool, they do have like a pretty robust process to review all of the documentation to make sure like the questionnaire is correct and to have like documentation to support their answers, which I think is important. Like,
Yeah, because they can hold it against them, be like, hey, you said you this, so.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing that was like a key factor why we implemented that tool is because they also have like an educational portal to those suppliers that you mentioned,
Okay,
like they do
yeah.
not have like a sustainability area. So if I tell them, okay, these and these and these you need to improve, they'll probably come back to me and ask, well, and how can I improve? What can I do? And I would love to do it, but I don't have the
Okay.
resource and time to help all of them. So they can go to the platform and they can see exactly how they can improve it. And they have examples. Let's say they don't have like an environmental policy. So they can download examples and they can start working on that. Or for example, if they need to do the greenhouse gas report, they have like a tool that educated them how to do it, where to start it, what they can do it. So that was the other reason why we decided to implement a system like that, to be able to help them to improve it and not only tell them, oh, you were wrong here and that. Because to your point, sometimes I don't even have the option to say, oh, no, I'm not going to buy from you. Sometimes
yeah.
they're super important to us. And to be very honest, I don't believe that's their way of doing things. Because if we tell that company, okay, we're not going to buy from you, they're probably going to sell the same product to another company.
Yeah.
So you're not solving, like any problem for all of us.
You're just
We're
losing money. Yeah.
losing money, and you're just, like closing the door, but other doors are going to open to the same product that you believe could be better, or companies could do better improvement, So that's how we're doing now.
Makes sense. And what was that tool called?
Ecovadas. Covadis.
Covadis. Awesome. That's a company in and of itself that like kind of helps
Yes.
monitor and educate corporations?
They're a global company. They're based in France and they're pretty, yeah, they're pretty big. Like that's the other thing too. The same questionnaire that I send them is not only from Blooming. They can answer one questionnaire and send to all of their clients. So that helps suppliers as well. Because imagine they get like all
Oh, yeah.
different questionnaires from all different companies. So they can share the same scorecard with all of and start requesting the same type of.
Well, you guys at Blooming are like paying to use this EcoVadis tool and then it ends up being something that your suppliers then get to use. So then that's good for the suppliers as well.
Yeah.
How much are you guys paying to use EcoVadis? Do you know off the top of your head?
Yeah, I'm not sure
No.
because that was not like the contract that I for, but
Right,
yeah.
that wasn't your,
Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Yeah, no, still, it seems like a really good tool and I know France does a lot. I think France is entirely on nuclear power now, isn't it? Or was that a different country? Not sure.
I am not sure.
Someone in here's got to know about it.
I think it is France, like.
Yeah, you're right. France has the nuclear power in terms of generating electricity.
Yeah. So France, I know, is doing a lot of good stuff in terms of sustainability. So that's awesome.
So going back to like regulation in Europe now, they have a pretty robust regulation as well called CSRD, where companies need to disclose a lot of information that here in the US, for example, not to. But again, because most of the companies are global, you're gonna start seeing much more information about, like ESG topics that we used to have in the past. So how companies are doing with water, climate change, other things, so. Sorry, I think she was, sorry, I'm so sorry. I think she was a,
So you had mentioned your 20 people company. What was that original company?
say it again, sorry.
Your 20-person company that you had? That
Oh, the one that I joined before? Yeah, it was a consultants company. So we did projects for oil and gas, like we did offset projects, like carbon offset projects. And not only invest on those, but also try to convince companies to pay for those offsets.
So how had you gotten absorbed?
So another tech company bought that consultants, and then we became part of like a much, much bigger corporation called PDI. Sorry.
Okay, awesome.
Sorry, I'm not good at this, guys.
I remember the graph that you showed that showed like the 16% in terms of aiming toward the perfect, yep, and toward getting close to the emissions goal. So for the year of like 2026, what are like the top things that may hinder us getting to that goal for 2025? Well, 2050.
Oh,
For like
should this go the net zero or
Yes.
yeah. So for the net, so that one, we are only measuring scope 1 and 2. It's not included scope 3. That one is a much bigger goal because then I need to include it scope 3 as well, and then calculated how we can offset 100% of that emissions. So for example, here, as I mentioned, like natural gas, so we need to not have any natural gas equipment in my kitchen. Everything needs to be electric. And then all of the electricity that we would consume in the future would be renewable energy. That's the way to get to net zero. But because companies cannot sometimes go to zero, that's where you have the offset. So I could buy offsets from other companies that are investing, for example, like reforestation or other things to, like capture CO2 and then balance that number if I cannot get that to zero in my operation.
And is that based on like for each like original or like individual organization like restaurant? Is there like someone at the restaurant who's recording that or you like get the report from? Or do they have to like find different like offsets in the community? So let's say they're working towards solar panel.
Usually we do that at the corporate office. So yeah, because it's easier when we combine all of them instead of each of them going to their market. But when we think about like the social piece of the ESG, then is when each restaurant, they have their own community projects because that's much easier for them to be part of the community and to find like the real like social projects that they want to support. But when we talk about environment, sometimes it's easier when we combine all of them.
Okay.
Not saying, yeah. Sorry, yeah.
Obviously, there's a bunch of different career paths you can take in sustainability and environmental science, but for students and recent graduates who are looking to get into this more corporate sustainability side, what advice do you have when job searching, networking, trying to just break your way into the field in general?
Feel like I'm gonna be biased on that. I'll give you my opinion. I think climate change, and because I said about the regulation, all of, like greenhouse gas emissions, how companies are going to manage that, I think that's a huge area that if I was you, I would start thinking about this because pretty much every single company, they're gonna need to have someone either to help or to calculate. So I think climate change is one thing. The other thing that I did during my career when I left, so when I was looking for an internship here at Patel, I saw one company that I thought it would be super cool to work for them. They didn't have any role opened. I sent them an email and just told them what I envisioned and what type of projects I did in the past. And they scheduled a meeting with me and then I got my internship. So sometimes don't only look at the roles that are open, but look about like the companies that you want to work for and try to engage with them, and send the ideas because it might work. Like they might open or they might build something that you can be part of. Yeah, thank you. Sure.
Maybe one more question. Is there any? Go ahead.
There's like a question, so like how do like corporations like from different industries, like how can they collaborate more to like reduce like climate change or like environmental damage? Because then also like with like laws and legislation, like they're like the building block of what a lot of society is made of, but they act really slow. And like sometimes like something as simple as like a person signing something or not can change that law. So how's the private sector or how are these corporations or private entities or whatever collaborating more to like figure out how can they like reduce like pollution or like climate change like on their ends or so or together?
So I can give you two examples from Blooming. One of them is like the National Restaurant Association. We work together with like other restaurants, as I mentioned. So we do have like a sustainability expert exchange where we come together and think about like challenges that we all have and how we can build projects together. And the other thing that we're part of is an organization called US Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. With that one, it's super important because I can connect not only with other restaurants, but with the supply chain. So the conference is gonna be here in Tampa. So that's one opportunity that I have, for example, to talk to farmers, to ranchers, to, like meat packers, like my whole supply chain and thinking about projects that we can do together to support them to do better in their farm. So that could impact our emissions down the road. Those are two examples that, like either associations or sometimes those like roundtables where you can connect with like different stakeholders from your own supply chain and try to find that opportunity to work together towards project that all of you are going to benefit.
Thank you so much.
Do you have time? No?
Yeah, I think we
My email. So if you want to, if you have any questions or to connect, to reach out and talk more.
Guys, just a reminder, this week is the climate teaching week, and tomorrow there will be a climate career fair at Honors College. Sophia is here, she's one of the organizers. So it will be from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Honors, just across the street. It's another very good opportunity to engage with companies, organizations, talk with them, even though if some companies, they don't have the role that you're looking for, this is an opportunity to learn more about the company, ask for some advice, and have understand the roles that they have over there. So I really encourage you all to be part of this career fair. And besides the career fair, they have so many other initiatives that there will be until Thursday.
Until Friday, so, or actually until Sunday, yeah. We have a bunch of different events on and off campus, and you can either keep up with us on Instagram at USF_CTI, or we're also on the honors website. You can just look
This
up.
here also has some flyers and a passport.
And stickers too, if you have already the passport, I can give you an extra sticker.
So Amanda was very kind. She brought some gift cards. So we have a raffle right now and see who will get the cap and also the $25 gift card to enjoy one of their restaurants. Just let me check with Dane if he already got the raffle. And we also have pizza. So while we are waiting for the result of the raffle, just enjoy pizza. And Amanda, again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for that. That was great. And we need to like reinstate the Office of Sustainability here at USF. So if you have not signed, please scan the QR code and share with your friends.
You guys can go work there. There you go.
And we also have another event with the Tampa Bay Region Planning Council on April 1st. Basically, students all over Florida, about 10 teams were able to design different infrastructures, like living by the water. And if you are not familiar with the Tampa Bay Region Planning Council, they are the engine of the Tampa Bay, and they help with a lot of like initiatives, and there'll be judges, including elected officials. 2 mayors will be part of the panel, and please come and listen to the student pitches, because you never know, the ideas that they have that they're pitching could end up being the policy that end up shaping our lives in the next 50 years, because that's what the Tampa Bay Region Planning Council does.
Yeah. Right, tell me.
It's
When is the Sustainable Beach Conference? You said it's in Tampa this year?
April.
Okay, gotcha. I'd love to, because that sounds really interesting.
They do offer some,
like
you can send your project, but I think they also offer some of them. Friends.
I just want to know what's going on, you know, because I didn't know about it this year, like if in the future maybe. But like,
Yeah, send to me and I'll share the link with you.
because that's something I think about a lot, especially.
Yeah, she's like, she's usually here, but like right now.
Like how that oftentimes like ranchers and farmers and environmentalists are often pitted against each other, at least in media, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. And that's when you like that conflict is then you know with things like you probably remember like in Oregon,
Yeah, I think.
wildlife refuge and like armed occupation, like that's what.
It's gonna be surprised when you see all of them. They're. Oh my gosh, you would. You know,
Exactly.
and it's just see a lot.
You guys want to announce the raffle?
Face. I'll definitely share with you.
Yeah, I'll-
Send you an email and I'll share with you. Yeah. And bonding.
Eddie.
Cameron.
It's not right. Oh.
You never
Drinks too.
Cameron, you did first too much. You know, we were not. I'm working. I will speak. Oh, okay. What do you mean? No, you get to learn.
Oh, yeah. To graduate, trying to. You're like,
Oh, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And
Come again.
your name?
Joy. It was my first time, so.
She left. Is she in here, guys? No, so.
They removed the connect. Helped out with like.
Yeah, I heard something about that. Campus like rewriting their building code for the first time.
No. I don't wanna, I don't wanna cut you off, that's my bad.
Yeah. Yeah, let me know if I can help her.
I'm happy. And that she's the other one that got.
Congrats.
Aqui tá outra.
And a gift card.
The rest tem que abrir dali. She's the other one.
I know.
They don't just kidding.
And Hassan? Maybe Hassan the other one?
Oh, no, I haven't been.
No? Okay. Sorry, Hassan, maybe you will be the one. Maybe I'm predicting that you are the next one. Sophia, yeah.
Oh, good. Here we go. That's all.
That's all.
Yes. Thank you.
Sophia, I wanted to ask, what is your role in the CPI?
I'm the just people for like the just like partners with each other, reach out to them and then ask like how they want to get involved. A bunch of different events.